Okay, good evening everyone. It's lovely to have you here and welcome back to the third class in this series, Growing What's Within. And tonight I want to talk to you about growing something that is possibly one of the most common things that you'll be asked to help a client grow. And yet they may not ask you in this particular term. The competency or the skill that we're looking at or the characteristic we're looking at having more of tonight is optimism. And it's something that they may not necessarily ask you for, but in so many, not in so many words. We'll have a look at that in just a moment. So welcome to another lovely Wednesday evening. I love spending these nights with you guys, and I trust you're enjoying our classes and our time together too. So the Growing What's Within series. Now guys, what I wanted to start with tonight is just to say to you, throughout the year obviously we deliver a number of quality classes to you, and there are some classes that are more appropriate if you're a beginner, and there are some classes that are more appropriate if you've been with us for a little while. Now this particular series really takes as a given the fact that you've got your head around a lot of different coaching competencies, and you're now looking at growing specific characteristics within your client. So it's certainly more advanced stuff. It's stuff that a coach who's been working for, 7, 8, 9, 10, even 12 months is sort of going to be at this level where they're working with clients on specific characteristics and having more of those in their lives. However, if you are a brand new coach and you're finding this great, stay with us, that's awesome. If you're a brand new coach and you're thinking, oh, I've got no idea what's going on, that's cool. This might be a good opportunity for you to go off and do some reading or research on other parts of your studies. But if you want to hang out, we would love to have your company, so please stay with us. I just wanted to give you that info because you can always get the classes recorded. They're delivered to you in a monthly format, so you'll get them at the appropriate time on your coaching journey. But it's always great to have you here live too. So thank you for letting me just make that little part of our evening clear. So moving on to growing what's within. In this particular series, of course, just as a reminder, we're looking for ways to help our clients grow the resources or resourcefulness that they're looking for. Ultimately, that's what they're looking for. They may not know that. They may think they're looking for an answer to a problem or an approach that they can use with someone, but actually it's all about them. And so they're always looking for either, ultimately, resources, which are things that are external to them that they don't know yet and that they can bring in for themselves, or resourcefulness, which is a characteristic that may already be within them and they're looking to increase more of it. So things like curiosity, tenacity, stubbornness, openness, all the things that that might help them move through a challenging time and get out onto the other side. Now, of course, as coaches, we believe that everyone has everything they need within them, and so that's the wonderful thing, is that we believe that we can assist anyone do just about anything. So that's a wonderful belief to have, and it certainly allows the clients a great deal of freedom when we start speaking with them. So no matter what the client needs, it's about helping them uncover and grow what they want more of, or helping them find that resource outside of them to model from others and bring it into them. And so in this series, we've been looking at a way to help increase a number of commonly sought after characteristics. And tonight we'll be looking at optimism. All right, grab your pen and paper. I'm giving you the code nice and early tonight. So the code for tonight's class is CGWW522. CGWW522. That's our code for this evening. Just pop it down on your paper, just to help prove which classes you've listened to and which you haven't. All right, moving on. So, guys, I am going to just quickly touch on this in case there's anyone who hasn't been with us the last couple of weeks. So, this is where I'm assuming you've got a certain amount of coaching experience behind you, because this may be a brand new concept if you're a new coach. What happens when we're not surface coaching, when we're actually doing deep coaching, is that a client presents with a challenge, and then we ask them, well, how is this an issue for you right now? We then identify the gap of how it should be for the client, how they actually want it to be. So then once we've looked at the difference between where they are now and where they want to be, then we ask them the question, which can be a challenging one sometimes, especially if they're brand new to coaching. Well, what is it that's missing within you that could take it from where you are now to where you want to be? And ultimately, what you're looking for there is the name of a resource or a resourcefulness that your client is wanting to increase, and that is your coaching material. So for example, someone who can't relate to their teenage child is having an issue with it because there's a lot of fighting and havoc in the house, and what they really want is just to have a respectful and fun relationship back with their child. And so the thing that's missing within them, and it would be different for everyone, but in this particular example, the client has said, well, I guess I could try to be more understanding and less controlling. And that stuff, the more understanding and less controlling, that's what we're actually coaching. All right, I'm going to assume everyone's cool with that. You guys have heard this a couple of times now, just needed to refresh that to make sure that we're all on the same page. All right, so let's look at optimism. Optimism is one of my favourite things to talk about. It's a place that I play in a lot. I'm doing a lot of reading around positive psychology at the moment, and optimism is a characteristic that is highly sought after, and in a moment you'll understand why. An optimistic worldview contributes to health, success, financial gain, and overall satisfaction with life. In fact, in general, optimists test higher on life satisfaction scores in every single area of their life. Interesting. Does that mean that they actually have the reality they want, or that they're just looking at the reality they have with more optimistic view? Interesting question. Well, new research shows that subtle subliminal biases in the interpretation of events can affect our entire life trajectory. So it actually starts when we're very young, and the subtle little differences that we have in the way we view things can ultimately make a huge difference in the outcomes we experience in our lives. Those of us who have a glass half full kind of mentality, we Andrew's just put a hilarious quote up. If the glass is half full, there's room for more vodka. Yep, and I love it. That's hilarious. Those of us who have that kind of mentality, we believe that things are okay in general. So when something goes wrong, it's just a blip on the radar. It's not a disaster that's going to change the course of our lives. It's simply it's a hurdle to overcome. Those who have a more optimistic worldview experience, and this is proven by many studies, less anxiety and less depression, which are two of the major collections of symptoms that people seek assistance for in terms of coaching, psychological assistance, counselling, etc. And so what it means is that they generally have a more pleasant life. And they're able to cope with challenging situations better. If you're more optimistic, you're also able to bounce back better, which means you can make decisions sooner in critical moments, you can take corrective action more quickly, and you can recover better from any challenging situations. And this applies to all kinds of challenging situations. So this is health challenges, workplace challenges, financial challenges, relationship challenges. All of those are affected in subtle and not so subtle ways if you have a more optimistic worldview. So this is a key characteristic that clients might be looking for more of. However, this particular one is something that a lot of clients won't necessarily say to you, yeah, I need to be more optimistic. There's a certain amount of stigma involved in our society, or in Western society at least, with being called a pessimist. And so if someone says to you, well, I need to be more optimistic, then I guess they're kind of admitting to you, well, yeah, actually I'm a bit of a pessimist. And this is something that a client is possibly not likely to say. I've certainly never had a client say to me, yeah, I need to be more optimistic. I've had them say, oh, yeah, I wish I could be more creative or more motivated, as were the last two classes, but I haven't had clients say to me, I want to be more optimistic. What I have had them say to me is the opposite, which is, I want to get rid of this anxiety, or I want to get rid of this depression. Can I just get a yes from you guys that you're hearing me, that this is cool, and is this an experience, a similar experience that you've had with clients? Has anyone ever had a client ask them to help them be more optimistic, or is it more that they're coming to you asking for assistance with depression or anxiety or worry-related stuff? Yeah, so getting a few yeses through. Hi, John. Hi, Justine. Yeah, so Tendo's saying sometimes they'll say, I want to be more happy. Yeah, so they're saying, yes, I want to be less depressed and anxious. David's saying it makes sense. They present for assistance with anxiety more and realise that smoking is the antidote. Yeah, right, because David's a quit smoking coach. Yeah, right. There we go. Hi, Jackie. Yes, Angie's saying this is a specific area for her company, Joyology. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, good. So we're all on the same page. Now, naturally, if we backtrack, if we go backwards through that information I've just presented to you, then of course those who are experiencing depression or anxiety or those worry-related type thoughts, of course, the studies prove that they are more likely to be less optimistic. So if they're looking to have less experience of depression and anxiety, then what we need to do for these guys is actually present to them the opposite worldview, which is a more optimistic worldview. I hope this is making sense for everyone. So this one is a little bit different to the other ones in this series that we've been looking at, because this is about employing a slightly different tactic. So let's have a look at it. Now, the secret to becoming more optimistic is simply this: to create an optimism habit consciously by choosing where your attention goes. Now, this could be said to be true of motivation and what was the other one we spoke about? Of certainly some other characteristics that clients will be looking for. However, in no uncertain terms, I believe that this one, more than any other characteristic, is about consciously choosing where your attention goes. So much of the work we do as coaches is about increasing focus on the positive and turning away from the negative. And many people, this is a bit of a slippery slope, this conversation. Many people will say that this is an unrealistic worldview or a real pie in the sky kind of thinking. Have you guys experienced this with your clients, that when you suggest that perhaps a little more positive mindset might be useful for them, that they say, well, but you've got to be realistic? Can I get some feedback on that? That's certainly been my experience. Yeah, people are saying yes. So it's interesting. This is a fascinating area for me, because the habit of negativity is what keeps us in fear. I.e., we're aware of the negatives, and so we falsely believe that we're protected from them. Yeah, Karen's saying it holds us back. Absolutely it does. So we as a society have created a habit of looking at the negative in order to keep ourselves what we believe to be safe. By being aware of all the risks out there, well, surely we're more safe because of that. And I would like to argue that worldview. And can I just please put up my hand as a reformed newsaholic myself? I used to watch the news in the mornings before I went to work, listen to it in the car on the way to work, read the Age or the internet news in my lunch break, come home listening to the news on the radio, and then watch the evening news when I got home or before I went to bed. So I was probably spending conservatively 3 hours a day watching the news. And what I realized when I looked at it, I certainly know that I had a lot of fear at that time. I was, and this was for a lot of my young adult life. I enjoyed being informed about what was going on in the world and having a conversation topic, but I also certainly noticed that there were a lot of things that I was afraid of. If there'd been a nasty attack of some kind, then I'd be scared to go out by myself at night. If there had been a house fire because of a faulty, I don't know, stove, I would be, looking at the stove a bit sideways sometimes and thinking, oh, do I need to get that checked? And it was about the fact that the news was only presenting, and you can't argue with this, guys, please let me know if you have the opposite view, but I'd be interested. The news really does present 99% negative stuff, the stuff that keeps us in fear, the stuff that we're addicted to because it helps us feel like we know what's going on in the world and what the risks are. But this habit is part of our very, very old brain that we used to need when we were cave dwellers, and we had to be acutely aware of our environment and the surroundings around us, because our everyday life contained many, many risks that we couldn't afford to ignore. Things are different now. We live with a certain amount of, comfort and stability in our lives, and that heightened stress response is something that's just not appropriate in our modern lives for so many of us. And so it's about readjusting our focus and wondering, well, if we're looking at things just to stay safe, how safe do we want to be? And if you want to be 100% safe, where is safe enough? Even sheltering in your house is not a safe place necessarily. Things happen to people in their houses as well. So this is about sort of becoming aware of that mentality that we have as a society to look at the negative and making a conscious shift. And it's an extremely slow process, or it can be a slow process, because the negativity pervades so many areas of our lives. But I believe that it's possible to create an optimism habit by consciously choosing where your attention goes. And I've had heaps and heaps of comments here, so I'm just going to pause for a moment and read them out because I love when you guys participate. Jackie, I'm getting there. Just give me a second. I'm getting there to answer that question. Tamara, there was a thing on the radio that getting too much news is not good. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I would totally agree with that, Tamara. And I come from a whole family of people who are addicted to watching the news. Yasmin saying, I haven't watched the news in 4 years and I've got no bloody idea what's going on in the world. Yasmin, I love it, and I'm in the same boat pretty much. Justine saying, news is just a list of what is crap in the world today, said Dimitri Martin, who's a comedian. I love it. Angie's saying, I've decided that the news now is none of my business. If I need to know, I can find out, but I don't need to know all the drama and negative stuff that's going on. Yeah, and it's actually a much happier world when you stop watching all the woes. Now, I'm not saying, guys, forgive me, I want to qualify here. My mindset here is not to ignore the real dangers in the world, the immediate dangers, or the things that we need to be aware of as responsible citizens of the world. I think it's about consciously choosing what you're going to let in and care about, and what you're going to say, I feel badly for those people, but that disaster on the other side of the world, it's a terrible thing, and I will donate some money or I'll do what I can, but at that point, it doesn't affect me. It's not directly affecting my life. I need to concentrate on the things that are directly affecting my life. So please understand me. I'm not talking about turning our back on the needs of the world. In fact, I'm very much an advocate for all of us participating in society and doing what we need to do. Yeah, there's a line, isn't there? Let's see, Karen's saying, I attended a very important interview today, and I'm sure if I had a negative mindset, I wouldn't have performed well. My optimism allowed me to perform at my best and not hold me back. Karen, thank you. That's such a great analogy, and that's exactly the point we're getting to, is that optimism, a habit of optimism, is not about ignoring the negative. It's about focusing more on the positive in order to increase your ability to create a more positive outcome. And it's about using the power of your focus and your habits to increase your performance to get to a better result at the end of the day. So well done, Karen. That's very exciting. Okay, Lisa's saying sometimes the news turns us into scaredy cats. Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Yeah, Mona. Yeah, that's That's a really good point. Remember the 21st of the 12th, 2012? It caused a lot of fear. Very, very good point, Mona. There were a lot of people, a lot of doomsday sayers weren't there. There were a lot of people preparing for the end of the world and hoarding tins. And, you know, God bless them. That's all good. It just made me wonder how many days of joy they missed leading up to that. Yeah. So look, guys, this is a focus thing, and it's a personal thing. But I believe that actually the opposite, for me, I believe that actually the opposite is true. We need to think about this in terms of a couple of things we know to be true. One of them is the world of quantum physics, which is behind a lot of the stuff that we play with as coaches. And the world of quantum physics says to us that when we observe an event, any kind of event in the quantum world, which is the very, very small microparticles, smaller than atoms, that what we expect to happen will actually affect the outcome. So this is a scientifically proven fact, and there's all kinds of wonderful studies you can look at on this. I'm certainly not a quantum physicist, but I love reading this stuff and thinking about the implications on the bigger scale. So quantum tells us that our expectation will affect the outcome in the quantum world. So if you blow that up to the world of people and cars and trucks and buildings and all the rest of it, the world that we play in, I wonder at a macro level there what is also going to change because of how we're focusing on it and our expectations of it. In coaching world, we sort of have distilled that theory down into a little soundbite which says that what you focus on is what you get, to the exclusion of everything else. And that for me works, of course, on two levels. It works in that quantum way that we're actually creating our outcomes through the expectations we have. However, to me it also is about the fact that so much of our attention is taken up by what we're focusing on that literally becomes our experience of the world. If we're focusing on the negative in a situation, it's impossible to focus on the positive at the same time. And therefore, our experience of that situation will become negative because that's what we're giving our attention to. The good news is it is possible to increase the habit of optimism. And to go back to Jackie's question, I would love to hear you guys, I would love to hear your response to this. So for a client who is saying, well, I'm just being realistic, what is your answer to that client? What is your answer to that client if you're noticing that they, you know, perhaps have a little bit of a pessimistic mindset? And certainly, guys, it's not about judging our clients or telling them, well, you need to be more optimistic. But if they're saying, yeah, I'm really worried and scared all the time, things aren't working out for me, and, you know, I feel like I'm not really getting what I want in life, you know, but I think I'm just being realistic. What's your response to that, to try and open them up to the possibility that perhaps a more optimistic life, a more optimistic worldview might assist them in their life? Okay, a couple of great responses coming through. So Jackie, here we go. Here are your responses. How's that working for you? Are you getting what you want from your life? What would it be like if you were getting what you wanted? If you could imagine a better result, what would it look like? Can't we create our own reality? And Vicky, of course, I think the answer is yes, absolutely. David's saying, what if things worked out differently for you? What would that look like to you? Okay. Beata's saying, how would you like it to be? And Carolyn's saying, questioning why and how they could change it. And John's saying, what harm would it bring? And Jackie's saying, could you say, what's the worst that could happen? And yes, these are all appropriate responses. Now, Jackie, I would love to tell you about a part of a movie that I saw the other day. Guys, I was at the video shop. I was sick and I was having a few days off, and I rented a very, very strange indie movie called Butter. And it's about butter carving in some small town somewhere in middle America. Hilarious. Very, very independent flick. It actually had, who was in it? Gina Davis in it. Fascinating movie and very, very funny. But there was this fabulous scene. So there's this little girl who has decided to go up against all the expert butter carvers. And really, guys, you have to see this movie. It's amazing what they can do with butter. Um, and she had gone up, she's this 9-year-old girl, and she'd gone up against all the butter carvers, all the expert butter carvers in this competition to represent her town in the state competition of butter carving. And her dad is sitting in the car with her, and she's scared to go in and start the competition. And he's saying to her, now listen, I want to warn you, the building could be full of aliens from space who are going to suck your brain out and put it into a hamburger. Or it could also be full of Hillary Clinton lookalikes. And he encouraged her to come up with all these crazy things that could be much, much worse than anything that could ever possibly be right. And it turned it into a lovely, it turned the pessimism and the fear she was feeling into a lovely game of actually how low can you go and how funny can we make this. And then you look at the reality of the situation and you go, well, actually, you know, the worst that could possibly happen is I might not win the competition. So it sort of puts things in perspective, and it was just a lovely scene in the movie, but I actually thought, oh, that's an awesome coaching technique. I often ask clients, hey, how bad could it possibly be? And we sort of do a few of them, but this took it to a whole new degree. So guys, go out and rent that movie. It's in the current releases at the moment, and it was a lovely, I really think it was actually a great coaching moment. So yeah, absolutely, Jackie, asking them, hey, how bad could it be? You can actually turn it into a game and have a really good laugh with them. All right, couple of comments coming through. This is an interesting topic, clearly. So Justine is saying, a comment, surely most life coaches choose that goal because they've already had bad times themselves. I don't think you can coach people if you haven't had bad times. Just my opinion. Justine, yes, I agree with what you're saying, and I also think that's your map, and everyone's experience of life is different. The coach who has had terrible tragedy in their life and who has overcome is just as effective as the coach who has had a very privileged upbringing and who is willing to go forth and serve in gratitude. Everyone's map is different. You don't need to emotionally identify with your clients and understand the depths of where they're at. You just need to hold the space with them. Okay, so Justine, thank you for that comment. And look, you know, without dark there cannot be light. But as coaches, we don't have to have experienced everything our clients have experienced for us to be able to emotionally connect with them. Okay, let's see. Raywin saying, what would your world look like if you took a moment to see it from the opposite view? Yeah, love it. Thanks, Raywin. Layla's saying, what can you do to change that reality for your benefit? Angie's saying, I cringe at the what's the worst thing that could happen. I feel that brings the client's attention to the negative. When we're trying to direct attention to the positive, I feel it's better to ask what's the best that can happen. Angie, I agree, and just use your sensory acuity and use the appropriate question for the appropriate client, yeah? And the way I was talking about it there was a game situation, and it does make it actually quite light and funny. All right, Mona, if they say they don't know to a question, how do I do that? How do I approach this change? Mona, Mona, if they're saying they don't know, you've reached a boundary condition, and that's a damn fine thing. So you're doing awesome coaching there, and you just say to them, okay, well, if you did know, what would it be? And if they say, I don't know, you say, okay, well, imagine, what could it be? And what else could it be? And what else could it be? David's saying, great comment. Yep, I haven't been a smoker, but I'm a smoking coach. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, David. Yeah, same actually. I've never had any trouble finding a job, but I'm a career coach. So, yeah, I guess, you know, you coach what you're passionate about, guys. All right, so off topic a little bit there, but I really, I love the conversations that we're having. Awesome questions coming through. Thank you very much. So increasing your optimism, guys, is about increasing a habit of optimism. And the first thing to do for someone who's wanting more optimism, of course, is the same as the first thing you do for anyone who's wanting more of anything. What do? You question them and you uncover whether they already have a success strategy for this thing that they want more of. What kinds of questions could we ask them to find out whether they already have a success strategy around optimism? What kinds of questions could we ask them, coaches? Because remember, it's not about us teaching, it's about us uncovering what's within the client. And if they already have a great strategy, just bring that forward and make it stronger. Sometimes we want to go and, show them everything and teach them everything, and we don't actually need to. We need to respect their map and just allow them to step back into a time when they've had this happen for them before. So guys, what kinds of questions can we ask our clients? Yeah, beautiful. When we're trying to uncover optimism. So Lisa's saying, what does optimism mean to you? Great question. What other questions could we ask when we're trying to explore their map around optimism? David's saying, I'd like you to remember a time where you had great optimism and happiness about something you looked forward to. Yeah, fantastic. Charmaine, tell me about a time when you felt optimistic and how was that time for you? Jackie, when did you last feel optimistic? What was that like? Jackie, that's a great question. Yeah, good job. Justine, open-ended questions. What excites you? When are you at your best? Yeah, Justine, yes, and that's exploring their map around positive emotion. And if you want to zero in a little bit more on optimism, you just bring optimism into the question there. Yasmin saying, if everything was as you'd like it, what would it look like and feel like? Yasmin, so what you're doing there is building a strong vision for the client. Yep, absolutely. So this is more of a gap identification question. Angela, tell me about a time in the past that you've experienced what you thought was a negative experience but later realised it was the best thing that ever happened to you. And now we're getting into the coaching questions. So clearly it's time for us to move on. So guys, what I want to do is just make sure that we understand the first thing we do when a client asks us, hey, yep, I want to be more optimistic, the first thing we do, instead of saying, oh, okay, yeah, I've got some exercises I can teach you about being optimistic. You need to question the client and get an appreciation of what their map says about optimism, what it means, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, so that we are not just plonking our map of optimism on top of the client's map when optimistic for us actually means happy for them. Okay? All right, so uncovering their strategies then is the next step. So now if you've done all those previous questions and you find that a client actually has a great strategy for optimism and they've just forgotten to use it at the moment, or maybe they're just not applying it in this situation for whatever reason, then you simply ask them to transfer their past strategy into their current situation. So you draw parallels, you get them to talk through how they could use that previous mindset or actions to assist them in their current situation, and boom, they usually go, oh wow, yeah, actually that is the same. I can do the same thing. So it's a wonderful moment when they realise, oh, I had that all along. However, as we said before, quite often a client will not actually be wanting to look at optimism. What they'll be looking at is, I'm feeling really stuck, depressed, anxious, or pessimistic. So this is often a question of focus, although it could also be an interpretation. So what you need to do is have a really good dig here and find out exactly what they're focusing on in any given situation, as well as, importantly, what they're picturing for the future in this situation and what's going on with their self-talk. Self-talk is really a big part of switching from a more pessimistic to a more optimistic mindset. And we have done plenty of classes on how to manage self-talk. There's even one called Managing Your Mini-Me. And this will tend to be a gradual uncovering process, and it may take some time to identify together all of the habitual thoughts and actions and body language and lifestyle things that the client is doing that are leading to their overall feelings of depression, anxiety, or pessimism versus optimism. Can I get an okay here from everyone? Is this cool so far? This is slightly different, thanks guys, slightly different strategy than the previous ones, because this is about, the optimism thing is about taking a 180-degree switch and turning in the other direction, as opposed to someone who just wants to be more creative while we just pump up creativity strategies. But someone who wants to be optimistic, who is currently experiencing a more negative experience like pessimism or depression or anxiety, the first thing you need to do is uncover their strategies for the first thing you need to do is uncover any past strategies they've had for optimism, and if they are not strong, then you need to go to, okay, well, what are your current strategies for those negative things that you're experiencing? David, does that answer your question? So this is where you're going to do some stuff about talking to them about the power of quantum. So do a bit of quantum reading, guys. You know I'm a passionate fan of that, and I can recommend plenty of books. I'm also going to be doing a quantum series later on this year. And you may also, this is, guys, where your NLP work comes in. You may need to do some deep clearing work, because their negative mindset, depression, anxiety, fear, etc., all bunched up as pessimism or lack of optimism, may well have its roots in a negative or a negatively perceived past experience, especially one from childhood. So this is where I'm talking about doing some of that deep clearing work that we learn about in NLP, a matrix therapy or a deep state repatterning, or one of those where we go back to the original event which led them to have this mindset and we clear that event. This is where this is a very appropriate strategy. Can I get some yeses that you guys are clear with me on why this needs to happen first? Because this pessimism thing, long time, it's a lifelong habit. And so it's not as easy as just bumping up your creativity or your motivation a little bit. This is a deeply held strategy. So yeah, it's about creating a fresh start. You're right, Yasmin. Now, it may not be necessary, but quite often this is one where you will find a depression or an anxiety may be coming from that deeper stuff, yeah? Yeah, it could be coming from a limiting belief. Absolutely, Jackie. There could be values mismatches. There could be beliefs problems going on. Yeah, a lot of it could be suppressed. So it's potentially one of those ones where you'll have to go there. And then it's about building a new habit. So, building a new habit. And this is all about the neural pathways, guys, remember? Now, this is a very, very deep one for most people, because optimism or pessimism can affect just about every single thing they look at, from whether they drop their toast the right way up on the floor in the morning, to how the traffic is, to who drank the last bit of milk in the fridge. It can affect everything, how they're going at work, whether they drop their coffee on their clothes. It can affect everything. So this is a thought path that they've probably gone down, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 5 dozen, 100 times a day, yeah? So building a new habit is going to require probably a blended approach. And here are a bunch of strategies that I've used in the past. I usually cherry pick quite a few, maybe 3, 4, 5 of these to really increase overall feelings of optimism and positivity. And this is something you may choose, rather than doing a specific session or sessions on this. This may be something that you just sprinkle habitually through your coaching style, or, you know, as appropriate with a client who's looking for that. Okay, before I get started, I'm just going to read something from Ange, who's saying, I was talking to someone recently who experiences periodic depression. And I asked, how do you know when you're moving out of the depressive phase? And they explained that they get out of bed earlier, walk a bit taller, breathe deeper, amongst other things. I asked them what would happen if they actively did those things consciously now. A week later, they said that they felt they brought themselves through the depressive episode by acting as if they were no longer feeling depressed. Ange, well done. Isn't that amazing? And it's so simple, because everything we do is strategy. All of that person that you're speaking about, Ange, they had a strategy for feeling depressed, and they had a time thing in their head for when it was time for them to start feeling better and acting differently, and bringing that to their conscious awareness and getting them to act as if earlier brought them out of the depression earlier. That's a wonderful gift you gave that person. Well done. So building a new habit might be about working through, and this is where you're basically reteaching the client's brain to think about things with a different mindset. So you could ask them, for example, to write down a series of, say, 10, we call them defining moments, 10 defining moments where they really believe, they came to believe that, you know, the world was a bad place or whatever it is they believe. Get them to write them down in detail and then have them walk through that memory with from a different point of view. So this is where you could do a lovely visualization. You could get them to do a third person type exercise. As I've said further down the list there, a third person perspective exercise. Just helping them to appreciate that the world that they believe is real, that they've built their reality and their current reality upon, is simply an interpretation of those events. And if they chose to have a different interpretation of those events, their current worldview may be different and their current experience may be completely different. So I find that a very powerful exercise. That's one I usually give to clients in a workbook and send them away to do it on their own time, but you can certainly do that in a coaching session. Very important if someone is doing a lot of negative self-talk, then we uncover that. We shine a light on that and we say to them, oh, okay, so you're saying that you're definitely not going to get the promotion at work even though you're the most qualified person. I'm interested. What are you telling yourself about that? And the person will have a very well-rehearsed set of sentences, whole paragraphs, a whole book that they tell themselves over and over again. Now, here's the magic. When they hand in their application, if they are using a physiology or body language and a psychology or mental state of negativity or pessimism, how are they going to present that application? What body language are they going to use? How confident are they going to be? How many times are they going to go over the application making sure it's right? Or are they just going to discard the application and get rid of it done, get it done quickly because they just know they're not going to have success anyway? And then are those actions helping or hindering their chances of actually getting the promotion? Do you see how this works? If they approach it with a more positive mindset, they're much more likely to do what needs to be done to get a positive result. So uncovering the self-talk that they're using in these situations can be very powerful. Any one of these strategies, guys, can be enough, but a combination of them will blow them out of the water. Very, very useful. Physiology and psychology of success versus, and exactly what Ange just said. I think that story, Ange, that you just told is a perfect example of how to use your physiology to change your psychology. And I'm just going to read it again for anyone who missed the point. Ange recently was speaking to someone who experiences periodic depression, and she asked them, how do you know when you're moving out of the depressive phase? They explained that when they get out of bed earlier, they walk a bit taller, breathe deeper, amongst other things, and then she asked them what would happen if they actively did those things consciously now. And a week later, they said that they had brought themselves through the depressive episode by acting as if they were no longer feeling depressed. So that's a perfect use of getting the client to use their physiology to assist with their psychology. Another huge thing we can do here, guys, is reveal the payoff. And quite often the payoff, the emotional payoff that the client is experiencing when they're using a negative mindset is it keeps them safe. It's usually about safety because if they're scared to go out at night or scared to run a marathon or scared to change their diet or scared to make new friends or scared to get a relationship, well, you know, then it's serving them to be pessimistic about their chances of doing any of those things. So if their self-talk and their fear is keeping them safe, there's no way they're going to want to change. You need to shine a light on that payoff and ask them to call it for what it really is, which is bullshit. Okay, you can also do third-person perspective exercises where the person can picture themselves in a situation where they felt they were overly pessimistic or negative or whatever the negative emotion is they want to get rid of. And you ask them to revisit that memory by stepping out of themselves and watching themselves. So as David has just asked in the question box, yes, you get them to visualize dissociated. So they are looking at themselves in that situation like they're watching it on a TV screen, and get them to notice about themselves what were the other people, how were the other people reacting to their pessimism or their negativity, what kind of effect did that have on the energy in the room, what body language were they displaying that brought them a negative outcome, what were they telling themselves that was leading them to feel pessimistic. So it's really asking them to just step outside of themselves and using a bit of creative visualization, notice the strategies and steps they've used to get into that pessimistic state. And by uncovering that strategy, we then allow them to make a different choice. Can I get some yeses from you guys? Are we on track? Is everyone still with me? The questions have gone silent. I think that means everyone's okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right. Of course, it's all, look, you know I'm a huge fan of talking about the power of focus, and I think this is a wonderful place to talk to them about focus. Journaling is also a lovely thing to do for someone who's looking to be more optimistic, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a moment. You can arm them with some quality self-questions, and you can come up with these together so that they're suitable for the client, but the kinds of questions I'm talking about are things like, how is this serving me to be pessimistic? What is it that I'm hiding from by hiding in this situation and staying in fear? What would happen if I was feeling brave? How would I act? Etc., etc. So asking them to use some self-questioning techniques and get them to pop those questions in the front of their diary, even just 6 questions that they habitually look at anytime they're starting to feel that they're getting pessimistic. It's about breaking the habit, guys, yeah? Also, making sure that your client is actually allowing themselves some downtime. Optimistic thinking is sustainable thinking. It's not just happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. It's not that, okay? So it's about allowing themselves times to recharge and I guess step back from everything. It's certainly not saying, okay, well now you can be sad and now you should be happy and now you have to be optimistic and now you should be pessimistic. Ultimately, the client drives their own bus. But letting them know that it's okay if they do have a down day. What can happen if a client is trying to is attempting to make a change and they do a bit of backsliding, that can be the beginning of a downward spiral. And so what you need to do is make it okay for them to have a backsliding day as long as they commit to renewing their focus the next day on moving back towards where they want to go. So letting them know that it's okay to have a downtime and that they're a beautiful, magnificent work in progress. And future pacing with a positive frame, absolutely vital here. The more rich, colourful, beautiful you can make that future pace, the easier it's going to be for that client to step into that next time they need to think about that situation. And one of the key tools I highly recommend here, I use this in my own life, is focusing on gratitude. A gratitude journal, as Tamara has mentioned in the comment box here, absolutely one of the best tools you can get for starting to make that subtle shift from more pessimistic to more optimistic. So a gratitude journal can be as simple as writing a page each day, focusing on the things that you're grateful for. It can be a blog, it can be recordings, it can be a video, anything, any modality the client wants to use, encourage them to do that. And it's only for them. They don't need to share it unless they want to. One of the many ways that we use gratitude, Hayden and I are big fans of gratitude, which is a funny thing to say. We often, if we're in a tough situation, we will say to each other, quick, what are 10 things we can be grateful for right now? And it just helps you shift the focus. And we also, every night before we go to sleep, we say 3 things that we're grateful for to each other. And the rule is that you can't say the easy ones like, I'm grateful for you, I'm grateful for our house, I'm grateful for our dog and cat. You can't say those ones. You have to say, you have to think, and you have to say the things that that, you know, might be challenging for you to think of, but it's just a lovely way to go off to sleep and draw your day to a close. And for any of your clients who struggle with that sort of getting to sleep in a positive mindset, this can be a lovely thing to do. I was at someone's house a while ago, and they, instead of saying grace before they sat down for their family meal, they each had to go around the table and say one thing they were grateful for. And I thought that was lovely. And to me, that's like a prayer anyway. So I think it's all on the same spectrum. I think gratitude is an incredibly powerful thing, and there are whole realms of study involved with how powerful gratitude is. But a daily practice of gratitude is really one of the most effective ways to build a long-term habit of optimism. Even just get the client to set their alarm, and they have to, when the alarm goes off, say 5 times a day, they have to think of one thing they're grateful for in that very moment. It's just a beautiful mindfulness thing as well. So these are all ways that you can assist a client to shift from a negative, or pessimistic or anxious or depressed mindset to a more optimistic one. And I would imagine, coaches, that that's a big, big part of the work you're going to be doing regardless of anything else. It's unusual to meet someone who doesn't want to have more happiness or positivity in their life, especially if they're working with a coach. They tend to be the people who really want that stuff. But gratitude and optimism, so key for your coaching practice. So whether you choose to become a specialist in these disciplines, whether you choose to make this part of your happiness package or your new beginnings package, whether you just weave them into your daily coaching practice, I encourage you to look at all of these tools that we've looked at tonight, because they're all so beautiful in assisting a client and really arming a client to be able to move forward once they've concluded their relationship with you and still have that positive mindset. All right, there's a couple of comments have come through, so please let me go back to them. Let's see, Tendai saying, Tendai saying, yes, she agrees, gratitude's the bomb. Tamara saying, watching a TED Talk before sleeping, which is positive. Yeah, TED Talks are great, aren't they? Yasmin, when I feel grateful, my heart expands and I smile more. Yes, absolutely. And it's a conscious focus thing. You actually need to work on it and focus on it in order for it to come. And when you do that, it becomes more of a habit. Okay, I've got a question here, which is perfect because it is now Q&A time. So let me... Yeah, David, gratitude is the bomb, isn't it? Tendai, David loves that. Okay, so Angie's saying, this is very much my niche, but not sure how to give the spiel without sounding airy-fairy. And get online and look at the work of the Heart Math Institute. It talks in detail about the science behind gratitude, and that's very much where we're coming from with our gratitude stuff. That's a qualification Hayden and I did a little while ago. Charmaine, question, I had a client come to me 3 weeks ago who wanted to do something about feeling depressed. Since speaking to me in 3 weeks, she's had a miscarriage, broken up with her partner, and suffered a death of a close person in the family. Okay, advice on if any of these approaches tonight would be suitable. Charmaine, without knowing your client, it's impossible to know. She's in a massive, massive transition time, and she's probably going to be going into cycles, well, she is going into cycles of grief. I think arming her with some wonderful self-care techniques, reminding her about being gentle and patient with herself, educating her about the grief spectrum are all going to be useful. And for someone who's had such a huge amount of stuff go on, it's all about them, and it's all about them doing what they need to do to get through this time. It's not about getting over it, it's getting through it. So it would very much depend on how she's, very, very much depends on where they're at and what their mindset is around all of that, Charmaine. But for me, I would imagine it's probably going to be all about self-care, educating them about the grief spectrum, Yeah, with the miscarriage also, Charmaine, there may even be a specialist that they need to see. So you know, a specialist counsellor in that area who's more well versed in that kind of stuff. A bit of a dual treatment there may be appropriate, but of course, if you're happy with her and she's happy to continue the coaching relationship to assist her, by all means. Yeah, so look, there's going to be a lot of different strategies, but I think it's not about ignoring any of those things. It's about dealing with them and delving into them. So my recommendation, have a big box of tissues whenever you see this client and be prepared to go to the depths. Thank you for being there with her. I appreciate that. Okay, a couple of other questions. So, Ange, yes, so Mona, the Heart Math Institute in the States, Heart Math Institute in the States. Google them and check them out on YouTube. Justine's saying, we don't need to be in the depths of depression ourselves, but I think as life coaches we do need empathy. Of course we do, Justine. That's a big part of what we do. And that's all about rapport. That's about yeah, appreciating everyone's on their journey. Yeah. Okay. Charmaine, you're welcome. I trust that's useful for you. Angie's saying, letting her know it's okay to feel each and every emotion as it occurs. Acknowledge each stage as a visitor that will leave them when the time is right. Ange, what a lovely way to say it. Thank you. See, as a coaching community, we have so many answers that we can assist each other and our clients with. I love that part of our coaching community. So, unless there's any more questions, guys, it is time for us to finish up and sign back in for our final ICF class. Any questions or anything before we go? I think I might be calling it. Okay, thanks everyone and have a lovely evening. I'm feeling very, very optimistic about all of you. I'm looking forward to next week already. Raywin, thank you so much. Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, Jackie, the codes are given at the start of the class, sweetie. I can't give them again now. Okay, you need to go back to the start of the class when the recording hits. Thank you.